You're listening to Tonebenders Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. After over a year of dedicated work, the entire Sound Ideas sound effects collection, over 500,000 individual files, have been upgraded to the Universal Category System's file name and metadata standards. With this enhancement, sounds are now more organized, searchable, and ready for seamless integration into your workflow. Head over to sound-ideas.com to learn more. Hey everybody, this is Tim Muirhead and I will be your host today. This episode is sort of a re-podcast of a live panel from last year's Sonic Days conference in Denmark. It features 4 panelists talking about how they try to keep creativity in their day-to-day work life doing sound for games. On the panel are former Tonebenders guest Richard Lapington, who was on Tonebenders in episode 248 as the audio director on Alan Wake 2. You will also hear from sound designer Katrine Amsler, who is a longtime friend of this show and just the best. The panel is rounded out by Mikkel and Anttila, Simon Stevnhoved, and hosted by Niels Böttcher, who are all game sound designers themselves. If you're not familiar with Sonic Days, this is a fantastic conference in Denmark that happens every year in November. I was personally lucky enough to attend it last year in 2024, and I had just an absolutely wonderful time. There are tons and tons of different panels happening, covering sound for picture, game audio, sound design for podcasts, museums, automobiles, and so much more. And all these talks are at Sonic College, a relatively new set of buildings in Kolding, Denmark, that is the perfect location for this type of gathering. For example, last year when Craig Hennigan was presenting about his sound work on Deadpool and Wolverine, it was in the school's state-of-the-art Atmos mix theater, so we could really hear everything he was describing about their Atmos mix process. That's just one example of how they use this amazing location to their advantage. Sonic Days 2026 is coming up and I'll be going again, but this year I'm actually going to be a presenter, and I'm extremely excited about this. In addition to being a moderator on some other panels, I'll be doing 2 solo presentations. One will be a case study of the podcast you're listening to, Tonebenders. We'll talk about how it started, how it was built, and where I see it going in the future. The second presentation I'll be doing will be on sound for animated series. I will go through the basic process from recording the actors all the way to final mix and delivery, with a big focus on the sound design process. I'm not at liberty to discuss who else will be at Sonic Days this year just yet, as they have not made the formal announcements. But I've had a little peek behind the curtain, and I'm really excited by all the amazing people that are going to be there to present this year. Listeners, if you can make it to Denmark this November 19th and 20th, it would be great to hang out with you there. I'm also excited to announce that there's going to be a Tonebenders Sound Design Meetup, Denmark edition, during the conference. So come on out. Speaking of Tonebenders meetups, the Tonebenders London Sound Design Meetup presented by the Motion Picture Sound Editors was last week, and it was another amazing night. I want to throw out a big, massive thanks to everyone that came out to have a great evening with the London sound design community. I met so many new, interesting people, and I got to catch up with some others that I've met through the podcast over the years. It was a really special night, and I'm already starting to figure out how to get another London sound design meetup going for 2026. Okay, let's get to the talk from last year's Sonic Days, Cultivating Creative Flow in Game Audio Development. This episode was edited by Julius Spenner, and now I'll pass it over to the panel's moderator, Niels Böttcher.
Okay, I think we're ready to start. This panel discussion is about cultivating creative flow in a production or in a company or as an individual. And this is super important, no matter if you have a 2-person indie company or a mid-sized AA company or an enormously big AAA company. It's super important to have a creative flow and to feel safe. And to feel safe to do silly mistakes or things you experiment with that doesn't necessarily become anything you use for anything. And this is basically what this panel discussion is about. So what I'm hoping to get around now is everything from tools to creative limitations, events, feedback culture, design reviews, workspaces, AI, different things like that. And there are many different ways to do this, also ways to not do it, and so on. And I hope to get a lot of ideas from real life somehow. And for this, we have a super interesting panel, very different people also, with very different background, which is very nice. And I think we should start with a very, very short introduction of who you are and your background. Maybe start with you, Richard.
Hi, I'm Richard. I'm audio director at Remedy Entertainment. Been in the industry for about 20 years. That you'll all know that if you saw my talk this morning. Yeah, that's me. We could also say that in relation to the panel, I do audio, but I also do quite a lot of narrative. I'm working with actors, and I've also actually been in a creative direction position as well for a few years, which is you get a different kind of angle on things from there.
Hello, my name is Simon. I am a sound designer at Massive Entertainment. I've been there 4.5 years now, I think. I worked on Avatar, and then before that I spent a few years in London working with CCP Games. Before that I went here to Sonic College. It was nice, but it was a different building. And yeah, I think that's it.
Hello, my name is Mikkel. I'm also previous Sonic College student, and currently I'm a freelance sound designer. And last year I worked on a game called Cocoon that won some awards. It was really cool. And for the last year I've been working together with Lego on interactive toys, which is also nice. Other than that, yeah, I'm a musician, play guitar, synthesizers, yeah, and enjoy diving into coding and learning new stuff.
Yes, hello. My name is Katrine Amsler, and I have a master in improvisation and composition from the conservatory in Malmö, Sweden. And I worked as a sound artist, I think we ended up calling it, for Martin Stig Andersen on 3 projects that he worked on. And now I'm a sound designer at IO Interactive, and I've been there for almost 2 years now.
Nice panel. The first thing I think we should dig into is like a lot of the creative work is done in the pre-production phase of a game often, or before the pre-production. That's often where a lot of fun experiments happen and stuff. I was wondering if you could tell a bit about what kind of research you have done, if you play other games, if you explore tools, recordings, walk in the forest, whatever you do to get into the like understanding a game and starting that and getting ideas and try it, that sort of thing.
I only have one thing. I have many things, but the only thing that I think of now is concept art. I absolutely love to find all the secret folders of the concept artists to understand the game. So I don't read so much. I do read, but I understand it better through the concept art, I think.
Do you then do any sound experiments or what I call sound sketches? It's a bit weird because that's, but do you do that for the concept art then? Or?
Yeah, I like to do that to have a bank of sounds that I can draw from. So sometimes that will be the first thing that I do. And then I have a palette I can try to squeeze into the different tools.
Simon?
I go. I think when you mentioned the pre-production stuff now, I was thinking I've been on Avatar for 4.5 years. I think I came in after pre-production, actually. I think people had been like working on it for a while, even when I started. The first thing I got tasked to do was like water stuff, make the sounds of all the lakes and the rivers, waterfalls. And then sort of I tried to make this like design paper, trying to find like, I want the waterfalls to do like this and that. And maybe technically it could work like this. And listen to a lot of other games and like, how do the waterfalls sound here and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun. And then you make crazy ideas. And you're like, if the wind comes from this direction, it should carry some raindrops this way. And it'll sound like it's raining next to the water. And then people are like, that's a bad idea. Or like, it's a cool idea, but it's a bad idea also.
It's good, but...
yeah, cool, but...
Yeah, I thought about, since I'm also fairly newly graduated and been freelancing mostly, I haven't been part of any specific pre-productions, but I'm the kind of person that I always have like 100 unfinished projects. So recently I've started treating all I do as kind of one like one journey or one coherent project. So I try and connect everything I do. So, for example, working at Lego, I've been kind of forced to learn some DSP programming. So now on the side, as a hobby, I'm trying to start maybe learning to program some real-time effects that I then hope I can bring into some games later. So I guess that is also kind of a pre-production, just having this artistic journey through and discovering new fun things and then hoping to bring that with me.
Pre-production. It's a complex place for audio. Yeah. It depends on which way. I mean, I'm just trying to think how to answer this. So I can look at it from like an audio director's perspective, and that is very much to do with understanding the genre and understanding what it is you're having to, trying to internalize what the thing which the creative director is trying to do. Currently, I'm actually working on the Max Payne project. So at the moment, I'm spending a lot of time just watching noir movies and working out why noir is noir. And I find that, for me personally, that's really, that's kind of my bread and butter. I really like trying to deconstruct different things, different genres, like why do all these movies sound the same, or why does this, that and the other work in this, that and the other way, or why does this director have this particular style? Tarantino is a really good example of that, or Guy Ritchie, which are the two that I'm looking at the moment. It's another really good example. For the team during pre-production, it's often a case of like looking at the game and working out what is going to be the dominant sound in the big sound areas, things that we're missing in the library that we actually need to record. So when I was doing Quantum Break back in 2014, 2015, we realized that we had no gun sounds in our library at all. So we managed to get the funding to just like do 3 big gun recording sessions, and that was basically our pre-production. So it's very much like, I think it's based on looking at like what it is you're missing and then driving from there and like trying to find the things which kind of excite you, and or you can kind of drive a team or drive the people to actually achieve something early on in the project, which is relevant obviously to the production.
Okay, the next question is about getting into this creative dead space that I guess everyone here knows. I think everyone here knows that. The typical situation where I've personally been in that situation often. If I start doing music, I use the same 4 chords every time and the same 2 plugins or whatever. And it's hard to get out of that somehow. Have any of you tried to work with limitations, or in Danish what you call benspænd limitations, with not using specific instruments, with not using these libraries? Do you have any?
I have one that I worked with, again, on Quantum Break. So one of the things we had to do is work out what does the sound of time being stopped is. And the only brief we have from the creative director is it has to be really violent and loud. And that was pretty much it. And we just couldn't nail it in. We couldn't get it right. So me and Villa, one of our sound designers, we decided just like for 2 weeks, for half an hour every day, we would just start with a completely blank session and just go like, okay, what does it sound like? And just chuck a load of stuff into the door and just try and create something. And once the half hour's up, we stop and then play it to each other to see what we have. And then we slowly, through discussing what we'd each done, kind of like start to hone in what we were actually supposed to be, what we thought this thing could actually be. And we ended up with one sound, which is about 5 seconds long. It's like, it's that. And then we just translated that into the rest of the game. And that was way of getting out of that kind of deadlock for us. And it actually works. It took about 2 weeks, but it worked really quite successfully. And that became kind of like the iconic sound of the game, which was kind of cool.
I think I've been working under limitations my whole career up until 2 years ago, because I had to pay rent and not buy plugins, so I didn't own anything. I have a crap MacBook from 2011 that started smelling, and so I was very limited. And now I'm working at a game studio, and I have all these plugins. It's eternal, and I don't use so many actually because I don't know them. But it's kind of a candy store right now. I'm trying to integrate it. But also sometimes when I get stuck, I used to work on a composer project called The Night Radio, where we were to make 100 compositions or sounds or just things in 1 month, I think. So we were busy. We had to do it really fast, and it was based on notes on Post-its. But the cool thing about the project was that we just produced something, and then we had to give it like a point from 0 to 5. So where if I gave it a 0, it was because I thought it was crap. If I gave it a 5, it was great. And that was just a cool way of getting something done quickly and not worrying about if it was good or bad. And so sometimes you'd have 10 things where 8 was crap, but 2 was fairly okay. And but it just it got me to do things that I normally don't do. So if you want to be successful, sometimes you think, then I have to do this thing in the middle here that I know exactly how to do it. But if you cheat yourself into thinking, I can do bad stuff, then you have more courage to use all the plugins at IO that I don't know how to use yet.
I was thinking about working on Avatar. It's like a big AAA thing. Sometimes you have to make so many sort of the same sound, so many variations. It's not just one bird who lives in this biome. It's like 60 birds. And then at some point it just gets a little bit boring, maybe, if you do the same bird many times. Yeah, so I think maybe that's mostly when I feel like I need to mix it up and stay motivated, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then,
any examples of what you could do to then get up and...
I think we saw a video. We saw a video of from I think it was from Ghost of Tsushima. They made these bird sounds. They needed more variations for the birds, so they sort of slowed them down into 0.25 speed. So they sounded sort of like human voice in a way. Then it would like record themselves saying those things and then speed it up. So it sounded like it was like a human version of that. We tried it a little bit on Avatar. I'm not sure if any of it made it in actually, but that was kind of cool. And then I like to try and record things also. Sometimes if I get stuck or just bored, I'll try and record some new sounds, and something happens sometimes in the booth, I think.
When I worked on Cocoon, we were like 2 main sound designers. And of course, we already had that weird dogma on Cocoon that everything needed to be made with synthesizers. But even with such a strong kind of direction, you still get bored and you get lost and you get stuck on a sound for a week. But when we were, I think, at our like peak frequency-wise, me and Julian, it felt like being in a band. So we would talk to each other very often, and we would sit next to each other. And I was stuck on something. I was just sent him the project, and he would take over and finish it, and vice versa. And we would resample each other's sounds all the time, and and don't take too much ownership. So be a lot of just shuffling things around, which was always, I felt like, fixed the stuckness.
Nice.
When you work on a title that has an already existing world, like Avatar or a sequel like Alan Wake, how does that challenge your creativity? Or how do you incorporate your creativity when everybody already understands the world?
Good question, I think. What do you do? I think it's a gift and a curse, maybe. It's like you have a movie you can watch and you sort of get an idea about how is it supposed to sound, ideally, the game. So that gives you a lot, I guess. And then you just need to try and find a way to make your sound sort of fit into that. So I guess you have less creative freedom in a way, but then maybe sometimes the boundaries can help a bit also sort of guide your choices, I think. Yeah. What do you think?
Good question. Yeah, I think, well, with Alan Wake, we were actually really lucky because the game was released 13 years ago. So there's, it's 360 era. So we had a lot of updating to do, which is really nice. Oh, and also I'd say that people who work on Star Wars, Jesus, that must be hard. Like genuinely to get that iconic. Everyone knows Star Wars. So, but weirdly, this is partly when I've noticed when working Alan Wake, but also from previous projects as well. I think the hardest things to actually do is make the real world in a game. If the world is imaginary, and I'm kind of curious about Avatar because you're kind of in between real and non-real in your world. But if the world is imaginary, it's actually much easier to design for than if you're actually trying to recreate something that already exists. So in your case, you're talking about a sequel to another game. But a lot of what we do as game sound designers is actually trying to recreate the sound of people's existence in the world, and that's really, really hard thing to do. It's much harder than making, for instance, The Dark Place in Alan Wake, which you can just like bullshit your way out of everything basically, because you can just, oh, it sounds cool because it is cool, you know. If you're trying to make The Sound of Rain, for instance, and that's actually really, really difficult. I think it's just trying to find the things which you want to keep the same. That's something that, yeah, which again, because I'm now looking at Max Payne, it's again something that we're kind of like, what are we trying to maintain? What's the nostalgia element in there? And then find the things which you want to expand on, and then find the nature of the world that you're trying to make. Because even if you're trying to recreate the real world, there is always like an artistic direction that you need to take because of the narrative, because of the kind of characters you have in it. How do they perceive the world? What are they hearing now? And start asking those kind of questions, and then you kind of get that creative, you know, instead of just making the sound of a bucket hitting the floor, you know, like how is that bucket hitting the floor is actually heard from a 3 meter tall blue person, you know. That's, yeah, I think it's a good question to ask.
Yeah, I also tried working on a project where we actually were so worried about, you know, hitting the existing IP and being approved by the IP partner that we just went too far and recreated stuff like 1-to-1. But we found out at the end that that was not the product we were making, and actually they didn't care. So we had to like start over and make like our version of it, which is a much more fun process.
I had an experience from project with Nintendo, and if it was the rule there was some iconic sounds you could not replace, but the rule was sort of if you could do it better, it was okay. I think that was kind of cool somehow, or make it more fun. That was sort of the thing they always said. Cool. I want to jump a bit to this question is more about how to get the best out of new talents somehow. Both if you have any experience from yourself getting into it, like something that would really motivate you when you started, or some good advices of what to do and maybe also not to do as an audio director chair, of how to like really not get the fresh, nice, good ideas out of these people that might not know a lot of technical details and stuff, but maybe have some really nice, fresh input.
So basically, you're asking how to get the best out of people. I'm going to talk about this from an audio director perspective. I have been obviously a sound designer 20 years ago, but the industry was very, very different back then. The industry was very different back then. It was a different kind of a culture. My take on it is, from a director's point of view, is I need to trust my people, and I need to create a culture that is very open, very candid, where people talk openly about their creative process and their creative ideas, and not scared to open up to that. So from a leadership perspective, I think that's really, really important. Not micromanage, not have an idea, it's kind of weird to say, but not have an idea about how something is supposed to sound. Obviously, you know, so we go, okay, it needs to sound like, you know, but actually allow the sound designer to find the thing that they want to make it sound like within the sandpit of the vision of the game, if you like. And that's what I try and cultivate within the team, is to kind of like set the parameters really nicely and allow for very candid, very open discussion about what we're doing and why we're doing this, if that makes sense. It's actually a very difficult thing to do across an entire team, and actually keep that kind of like culture of collaboration and openness and candidness within a team. And actually, if you saw my talk this morning, it's actually why I use that language, because I don't want to define what I don't want to go and tell people what things should sound like. I'm just trying to create a sandbox for them to work within, so the team is all working within kind of like the same parameters, but they have the agency to do the things they do, and then just keep an eye on everyone and try and support them in the things that, you know, support them to do the things they want to do and do the things which they like doing and they're good at. My advice for people coming into the industry is be open. You don't need to know everything. Technology changes. In 2 years' time, we'll be doing something different to what we're doing now. What is more important is when you're developing games, you're working very closely with other people. It's the collaboration that makes the project great. Basically, it's the people who work in a team that make the project great. And if you come in with an attitude that I know everything, or, you know, that kind of like if you come in with too much of an arrogance or something, that's not going to serve you well within the industry, because you have to, it's basically you're married to your teammates in a literal, kind of not in a literal sense, but it could be in a literal sense, I don't know, but in a kind of metaphorical sense, because you spend a lot of time with them and you have to get to know them to be able to work with them well and be able to create this creative hub that is creating games. And that's not just the audio team, you have to get to know your level designers and your programmers. And everyone's really different, so you have to be very open. And particularly in audio, you have to be very open because you do work with everyone. So these are the kind of things which I try and promote with my sound designers and my tech designers and my programmers, is this kind of candidness and openness within the teams.
Can I ask you, Richard? So, because some of the projects where I've started, the really good ones, I feel they've been very good to let me just kind of roam a bit in the project and do stuff. But it's also very nice to have like a smaller sandbox in the beginning. So do you, when you hire a new sound designer, do you then kind of hold their hand a bit to start with, or?
Yeah, I usually assign them to somebody who I think they will match within the team. So I don't personally do this, and I try and assign them to somebody who will support them. Everyone has a slightly different personality, and certain people get... This is a thing about reading people. We go into psychology here, and this is part of a director management position thing. Because what you learn as you go through your career is you end up more in this psychological realm than this technical or practical realm. But what I try and do is I ask whoever, the new sound designer, like a junior sound designer, just ask any stupid questions you want. That's really important. If you don't ask questions, I know there's something wrong, because there's no way that you can know our engine, because no one knows our engine, not even the people who've been working on it for 20 years. Like literally, because programmers leave and buttons do things and we don't know what they do. It's just the way it is. So yeah, you have to ask stupid questions. Then I try and assign them like a buddy, and then we kind of just bounce off and find out what that person's good at, and then slowly open up their field of influence effectively from there. And I've got to say, nowadays, compared to when I've been hiring people for 20 odd years now. Nowadays, people are coming in with such a high technical standard and such a high sound design standard because of schools like this, basically, that is not a concern anymore. It's much more to do with how do they gel into the team and what kind of attitude they bring with them. And this is not like a nepotistic thing, everyone has to fit together, but it's like, how is the person we're bringing on actually going to challenge my team and change them to a positive way? Yeah, and it goes right down to like, within my team, I actually encourage conflicts. I encourage professional conflicts. I encourage people and I often go into meetings and say, this is my vision for the game, tell me it's shit, basically. Literally, because I want to be challenged and I want to have the answers for them. And if I don't have the answers for them, then I have a problem with what I'm trying to tell them, if you see. So this is these kind of principles I'm really trying to instill.
Nice. A bit related to this, and also what you asked about feedback culture. So I mean, in games there exists a ton of different feedback culture, and you give feedback in different ways. Or you can have weekly design reviews or daily reviews, or over the shoulder dropping by giving some random feedback, or a no feedback culture at all, or things like that. I think personally the worst thing I've tried was a creative director I once had, that I had worked for a cutscene for a week and I had to present something, and he came and he looked at it and he said the same thing he always said. That was, oh, cool, that's fine. Maybe the red color there is like should be not that red or something. That was extremely demotivating. Can you elaborate on feedback culture? What works, what doesn't? Good experiences, bad ones, so on.
I have a fun one, which was on Cocoon. We had a small team. I don't think you could do this in a bigger team, but basically we just had an open Slack channel, or like a Discord channel, where we would post little video snippets whenever we made a new sound. And mostly it would be the audio director, Jakob Schmidt, who would then comment. And he would make really nice comments, time-stamped with like whatever he thought about that thing. And also often the art director, he would pop into that chat. He's called Erwin, and he's a bit of like a mad genius. So, for example, I would make a voice for this creature, and he would post a comment that was like, no, actually, this is like a god, and it only talks like inside your brain. So you need to, it would be very like creative feedback that would not be technical and wouldn't be precise, but it would be like guide you toward what would fit actually with his thoughts and the art for the game. That was really nice.
Any other input?
I have one. I think I really like doing fast iterations and getting feedback early, especially when I like start a new task where I'm a little bit like I'm not entirely sure how it's supposed to sound. So I'll do like, spend a few hours maybe, make a sketch, get some feedback from people who decide stuff. And then that way I can sort of faster narrow in on what it is supposed to sound like. And it's easier to get feedback on something I haven't worked on for a week already. And I don't know, it's a top tip. I like to work like that. Don't get attached too much to the babies.
And just to follow up on that, is it then easy to get the feedback? Or do you have a culture there where it's easy to get that feedback?
Yeah, I think so. At Massive Entertainment, it's easy to get feedback. But it can also be like sometimes you can also get too much feedback, right? If you ask 5 people and you get many different opinions, it's a bit like too many cooks, too many opinions.
I'll ask you a question. What do you do when you get 5 different opinions?
I listen to the most important person. That's me. No, no. Then I have there's a lead, there's an audio director. They sort of weigh a bit more, I think, in the end.
I just wanted to add that for me it just got easier to receive feedback when I'm not the product. It's the game that's the product. So it's just really easy. If it's like, I think we're pretty good at giving each other feedback from the formula. Is it good for the game? No, then I'll change it. And that has nothing to do with me. So I used to think that getting feedback was difficult, but that was when I was the product. Now I'm not the product anymore. So it's super easy most of the time.
Do you have anything to add on that you?
Just one thing I'm a bit conflicted about is how to ask for feedback. Sometimes I share like the video from the game, but really I want people to experience the sounds in the game. But that's a bit harder to get feedback that way, in my opinion, because it requires people to like spend some more time going to the game and testing the sound. But it feels a bit detached sometimes to just have a video like really isolated of the sound. So just if you have any thoughts about that.
I have an interesting thing there in Lego where the iteration time is so slow that sometimes I had made a sound almost like half a year ago, and then people can actually test it and play with it, and they'll have a whole like it needs to be redone completely. And I'm actually not sure I have like how to, because it's so important to have people experience the things they're meant to be experienced. And I think if you cannot do that, then maybe you need to do like the next best thing, which would be faking it somehow while they're there. Yeah,
I'm just actually thinking, because a lot of the work that I think a lot of the bigger studios do, and probably across the game industry, is actually we do a lot of like hybrid working now. So actually feedback and sitting together and playing the game is getting rarer and rarer. And so a lot of there's like Shotgrid or Clash or something where just shoving videos in and then asking for feedback on that. It's more of a comment than anything else, but I think, it's a shame in a way that we're not experiencing things together all at the same time, because the way they should. And I just want to, your comment about not being the products, from a person who gives quite a lot of feedback, that's actually really important. If you are giving feedback, differentiate between the person and what it is. Always focus on the thing that is, the game or the sound. Is really, really important, because you don't want to make things personal for people, because that makes them not want to give, not want to talk to you, basically. So, cool. Yeah.
I think it was also interesting what you talked about today, about describing it as more as mood instead of trying to say correct sound words or something like that. Okay, jumping a bit from a team aspect and from a personal aspect, are there any conferences, events, concerts, recording sessions, nature walks, or something like that that you always go to or always would like to go to and return with a trillion kilos of inspiration?
I do sometimes at the film school in Copenhagen. There's some game audio seminars that are a little bit expensive, but but really nice, and there's a lot of interesting people who come and talk there. That's nice. I like the game audio playthroughs in Copenhagen also. It's fun. I don't go to everyone, but I try.
Yeah, Sonic Days. No, it's my first time here, and it's awesome. But it's a weird one because I'm terrible at finding my way around. I get lost all the time, and that's actually when I get the most inspiration. It's when I get lost somewhere. It could have been art or talking to people, but when I end up in parking lots somewhere weird, I think it's almost a game, right? So I like getting lost.
Yeah, I also think even though if you work with games or interactive audio, there's so much nice inspiration from just regularly going to the cinema or going to art museums and visiting and talking to people who do other stuff than you. Sometimes that's where you'll be inspired by some random thought that can somehow work in audio as well, I think.
Cool. Let's jump into playing games while doing games in some way. You just said that there are many people working hybrid, so it's rare that you actually play the game together. I think I've tried to work on games where we never ever played a game together, and I also tried where there was a big gaming room and nobody ever sitting there with tons of stuff you could do. I was wondering if any of you ever have like that you're forced to play a specific game or forced to play something together, or that you get homework that you have to play this game at least 1 hour or something, or is that only something people do in their spare time because they love games anyway?
I actually got that as homework to play The Last of Us 2, and that's my homework. So I'm gonna go do that on Monday.
I was gonna say we don't really now. I think when I worked at CCP Games in London at one point, we were sort of a little bit in between projects. I was quite early phase. Then we would have these like let's play sessions. So like every week there was like 2 hours of a new game. We would all play together, and it was quite fun. I'm not entirely sure I learned so much from it. I learned who are like really good at hitting heads in Counter-Strike and stuff, which I guess is team building also. But
at Geometric Interactive, there's this really nice culture that is just a bunch of people who are super interested in game and they get super excited about games. For example, when the new Zelda came out, Tears of the Kingdom, everybody was just talking about it all the time. So I got so hyped that I ended up buying a Nintendo Switch to play it, to understand, because also it'll be like the reference then for the next 3 months for everybody on how stuff works and what is a cool sound. You have to kind of stay in the loop. If you're doing games, you need to play games. Yeah, at least if you want to understand what the conversation is about.
Yeah, I'm in a position at the moment because obviously Alan Wake was quite successful, and I've been asked to do like jury judging on judging panels for competitions, and you have to go through so many games. But it's really, and you play them and you play them all, and you want to give everyone a fair chance. That has been really eye-opening for me, actually. So if you get a chance, just get on Game Pass or something, just download random stuff that you would never ever play, or go on Steam and see what's free, or Epic Store and see what's free, and just grab it, because people are doing amazing things out there which you'd never ever ever come across otherwise.
I'm gonna jump a bit because time is running. I'm gonna jump into the AI word that I actually planned not to include, but now I include it anyway. I was wondering if any of you have used or do use AI in any way to not to just push a button and do the whole game for you, but more to get inspiration in some way.
I've used some just for fun, trying making some sounds, like seeing what's out there, which hasn't given me any nice results at all. But then I use it a lot for programming help, because I am not trained in that. So it helps me like quite a lot, actually. And just to understand other people's code as well, and to get a better feel of some of the like harder concepts, I think is really good.
I have to second the programming. Programming's kind of like my hobby. But yeah, I used ChatGPT to write Python scripts, or not write Python scripts, but to ask them what's wrong with my Python scripts, basically. Yeah, and they often come up with either workable or non-workable answers. Yeah.
I also actually found out the other day that ChatGPT can you can send a screenshot of like a Max MSP patch, and it can read it, and it can understand what's going on and tell you what to fix, which is really cool.
AI. Yes, AI. I don't know what I can say really. We do use AI a little bit. Yeah, we actually been using neural networks for animation which is kind of like the cheaper form of AI. What AI started from for animation for 5, 6, 7 years now. As part of, so we take an actor in, we do the ROM. It's called a ROM, which is they go through all the facial movements. Then when we do the actual facial animation captures, we send that to the AI to reproduce it. And what that means, actually, kind of interestingly as well, once we have that data set, we can feed it audio, and the audio can then generate the facial animation through our neural network based on the actual person who created the ROM. And we've been using it for quite a few years now to do that. So that is something we've talked about at conferences and stuff. And we used to use Semantic for placeholder dialogue. So I think a lot of people do use AI for placeholder dialogue, definitely. What I see in the industry coming up, I think dialogue obviously is really controversial. We don't use AI because it would be absolute suicide for us with the SAG-AFTRA strikes. So for audio and AI on dialogue side, we don't go anywhere near that, even though some people would like us to, but we really don't, because it would make our life easier, but we don't want to touch it. I think the next thing that people are going to be looking into is actually music and generating music with AI, which is something we're looking into, but I also think that's quite morally kind of like the way the systems work currently, it's morally quite ambiguous, and I'm not sure I personally not going down that road. But ironically, I'm actually on a panel for Aalto University in Helsinki at the moment talking about the uses of AI in games. And what we're looking at, because they have all these moral and like humanistic elements, so they don't want to start taking people's jobs, basically. But one of the things we started talking about is if you could use AI to mix a game, so you can somehow feed it like a movie, for instance, and then it would understand what the output from the game is and remix it on the fly in real time based on a model. So that's what we're looking into at the moment and thinking about, and a very, very, very rudimentary how that would work. Could we actually do that? So it's a bit like what Isotope are doing with, I think it's Nectar, is what they call it. Neutron, yeah, that's it. So a bit like that, but on a game scale and running that in some way. I think it's quite an interesting adaptation of what AI can do and actually using it in a positive way for something that we actually struggle to do now. But yeah, it's just an idea at the moment, but I think it's quite an interesting one.
Okay, one last question, and I think I would leave it to the audience if you have something. What's the absolute worst thing you could do to kill creativity on a team?
I worked on a project once where for every sound asset I made, I had to write a documentation. It had to go through 3 rounds of review by the director of the game before it was allowed in the game, and I quit.
Our sound design is to do production work, which is pretty much the same thing, actually. You have to write a JIRA for every sound that you make and describe and justify it. Yeah, anything to do with writing, actually. Yeah.
The too many cooks thing, I think, can be not so nice. I guess sometimes, well, I mean, it's not the absolute worst you can get. It's not an opinion, I guess. But I think for me, it's just like sometimes it's hard to keep motivation. And if you don't have motivation, that's really bad for creativity in a way. It's like you don't want to do stuff.
And too many chefs, is that too many opinions on it? Or
yeah, that's if like, okay, you get all these 10 people are now very invested in what I sort of produce. And it's like sort of limiting in a way, I think. Yeah.
I'm not sure what to say either, but I guess sometimes it's not like it completely kills my creativity, but sometimes when things get a little bit too much one-to-one, like, here's a door, make a sound that's a door that does what a door do. Then sometimes, I mean, that's exactly what you need. But I try to always just sneak something in there for my own sake. And what else can... obviously I've been preaching this the whole week, the fear of as soon as I fear that what my colleagues would think of what I'm doing, then it just dies a little bit. So then I get up from my chair and punch myself in the head a little bit and walk around, and then get that out of the door.
Cool. It almost sounds like an excuse that you make the sound special somehow. I think that's like the door. I think for me that's what actually makes it sound like that game. That doesn't sound like a million other games.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to hurry.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are there any questions here from? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering. You talked about you were working together with a mad genius who was really creative, but maybe not that technical or something. And I was just wondering, just to begin a question, how do you make sure you talk the same language with the creative people? And is that even important all the time to talk the same language? Yeah. So it's really two questions. Yeah.
I think it is important to learn how to communicate sound as a sound designer, and I think also that is what was really nice about attending Sonic College, that I got a vocabulary that I didn't have before. And I think it will be different for different persons and different projects. On this specific one, we were everything we did was an experiment, so we couldn't really do a one-to-one of whatever somebody was thinking. So then it's more of an alignment process, which is probably is anyway, that I'm over here and he's over here, and then we somehow, through iterations, meet each other. And yeah, then you make some mistakes, but then you'll get a better of an understanding of what he meant, I think. Yeah. I don't know if that was a good answer, but...
Yeah, I don't know if it's an answer to that either, but I mean, on a team, we definitely have different ways of learning. So some people can read a document and then understand what it says and go do it. I can't do that. We have a lot of documentations, and I read and I read and I read, and nothing happens. And then I have who was actually my buddy when I started up, who learns in the exact same way as I do. So whenever I get a page with documentations, I read it and I try to understand it, and then I go knock on Colin's door and ask, can you explain this to me? And then he does it in the way that I learn things, like more hands-on, I guess. And that's just the luxury of working on a team, because you have different specialized knowledge and different people and different ways of learning and different ways of giving feedback. That's really valuable. So you find your people. I know that to understand or to learn something, I go knock on his door to get some technical knowledge. I have another one that I ask. So that's really really nice, I think.
I think Lydia also said something clever yesterday about remember, just ask if you talk to someone that speaks something technical language, you don't understand any of it. It's much better to just say, hey, I really don't understand it.
Yeah,
or be very honest.
I have to say that as well. I used to be in the music business and never ask anything. I would be the person have you heard that artist? Someone would ask me that and I'd never heard about the person. I would say, yeah, I know. And just fake it. And it's just the stupidest thing you can do, right? You lose so much time. So that's definitely one thing I learned. And there's also an environment in general, I think in game audio, that you can ask the stupid questions, and the stupid questions are the best. I've noticed every conference, when I'm up here or anyone else, we always say, yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to stop saying that, because it would be interesting if I said that's a stupid question in the best possible way, because it will probably encourage all of us to ask more questions if we didn't say every time one of you asks something that it's because then if it's a good question, then there are bad questions. I'm going to stop saying that.
Are there any more questions? Yeah.
I thought a lot about that games take such a long time, and people say, "Oh, I made this game the last 7 years," and I'm like, and you put so much personal engagement. I don't know. So much time and effort and your livelihood and everything. And how do you deal on a personal basis on waking up every day, working on the same game you did 5 years ago?
You marry your colleagues. I don't have an answer, actually. I just wanted to make the joke. Yeah, I mean, the longest project that I worked on was about 6.5 years, which was Quantum Break. It's hard. Yeah, it's genuinely hard. And you form a relationship with the game, which is really personal. It's an odd thing to say. And you form a relationship with your colleagues who you're working with every day, which is also really personal because you're striving for the same thing. How to cope with that?
I definitely think more about James Bond. Like every day I wake up like, yeah, James Bond. But yeah, it's a curse, right? You wake up thinking about the game you're working on, you go to sleep thinking about it. But that's also just because we're passionate, I think.
I do actually have something real to say. I've just thought of it. You need something outside of your work life. You genuinely need something outside of your work life, which is completely different from the thing that you do. So it's not sitting at a computer. It's just something different. I mean, I have two hobbies. I go cycling. I cycle a lot. And I actually do archery as well, which is, and then I have this social outlet that with people who I just do not have any idea what I do. And it's just pure, archery is good fun. It's if you should try it if you haven't. But because it has a rhythm to it and it's a very social thing to do because you're all in a group together and you're all trying to achieve the same thing. But it's actually just a lot of fun. But that's my outlet. And I don't talk about work. I don't talk about anything. And that's where I switch off. So yeah, you need that with these long projects, definitely.
I also think that you have to be, of course, excited to make a good project, and you need to be invested, but you also need to detach yourself and remember that it's a job, and there are things that are outside of your control, and things you worked on for months will get cut or be forgotten about, but that's a part of it, and that's why you need something outside of it. It can't be your whole life.
I'm going to be really controversial here, but when you're working in a games company, you're not actually an artist, you're a designer, and you have to approach it like that. You don't approach it from an emotional, personal level. You have to think, I'm doing a thing as a service for the game and the project that we are, and just keeping that mental, kind of compartmentalizing in that way, I think is really important too.
Yeah, I think I remember the moment where, like, on Avatar, I've been on Avatar for 1.5 years. It keeps going. It released last year. Then there was extra content, because we just keep going. I remember the moment where I sort of realized it's like, it's a marathon, right? It's just like, it just keeps going. And after we ship this one, there's another one around the corner. So it's like, you need to also work in a way where you don't sort of sprint towards something that's supposed to be the big climax. And then next day you just come into work again and do more. And you release a game and people online are just like, it should have been third person. They say, you're like, thank you for that. And, but yeah, and then I think I've sort of had some phases also where sort of my motivation changes a bit. And if I've done the same thing for too long, I want to sort of find new ways to learn something. And then you can sort of think, okay, maybe what's this mixing thing about? And then maybe I can try and do that for a bit and learn some new things still. Yeah.
I think that's also the cool thing about games, that there's always an area you can nerd more into, or something new that was developed. I think we are actually over time now. Thanks a lot. That was interesting.
You can search your podcast app for Sonic Days to find the conference's own podcast featuring many of the presentations presented there over the years. Better yet, start making plans to join me at Sonic Days 2025, November 19th and 20th. After over a year of dedicated work, the entire Sound Ideas sound effects collection, over 500,000 individual files, have been upgraded to the Universal Category System's file name and metadata standards. With this enhancement, sounds are now more organized, searchable, and ready for seamless integration into your workflow. Head over to sound-ideas.com to learn more. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues, or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.